So I completed my Appalachian Trail through hike. I finished on July 30th. I started on February 27th. So I did a Nobo northbound hike, and took about 5 months. And before I set off on my hike, I did a gear review, kind of outlining and showing kind of the gear that I plan on taking. What I'd like to do now is kind of a post review of all the gear that I ended up with, and then the gear transition, and some of the things that I left off or sent home. And I'm going to break this up into 3 different parts. One's going to be, I'm going to go over the items that I ended up with and what my organization of those were. And then I'll go over the items that I ended up sending home, either because I didn't need them anymore, or I substituted. And then I'm going to go over some items. The final video will be going over items that I sent home because they just weren't working for me, and so I just didn't need them. I wasn't using them. So that's kind of the outline. So I'm going to start off here with what I ended up with. So I'm going to turn the video. So to start off with, here's my pack. I had a Gossamer Gear pack, and I started with this pack. I've got it loaded up exactly the way that I hiked with it. And I'm wearing, I guess let me flip it around again. I'm wearing the clothes that I wore on my hike. So I've got a merino t-shirt. I've got long pants. I've got merino socks. And in my pocket, my dog's saying hi. And in my pocket, in my left pocket, I always kept my reading glasses. So that's that. And then in my right pocket, I always kept my phone in the main pocket. And then these pants, outdoor research pants, I kept a Ziploc with money, my driver's license, and a credit card. That was it. And I had micro Leatherman, and I used this to trim nails. It has little scissors on it, and a little knife, and every once in a while use that. And I also kept a little tube of Vaseline for chapped lips and for just general chafing, body chafing. I use that for this. So I'll show you what I started off with and why I ended up thinking this was a better option. But I started with actual chapstick, and then I transitioned to this. So that's it. And I've got my merino wool boxers, boxer briefs actually. And as you can see, just about everything is merino wool. My socks, my shirt, and my underwear. The pants aren't, but they seem to do a pretty good job of resisting odor. But I'll talk about a shirt that I started with that just didn't do a good job of resisting odor at all. But this setup was really good. This is what I hiked in every day. Let me go back, then I'll switch to talk about, let me talk about my shoes. So I ended up with these Ultra Lone Peak, and I like the high top. The reason I like the high top in combination with long pants is, one, I don't like stuff brushing up against my legs. Bugs, I don't like bugs having access to my legs, and I don't like, I'm allergic to poison ivy, so I don't like that. So I basically, really like the long pants from that perspective. They are a little bit warmer, but just slightly warmer, and I don't have to fool with gaiters because long pants and with the mid tops, you don't have to worry about. I never had to worry about stuff getting in my shoe. So this Lone Peaks worked really well for me. They're kind of a more ruggedized boot than their actual regular low top trail runners. And then I had these inserts that I would put in there, and that combination worked really well. Very limited blisters once I switched to this setup, and that sort of thing. And then I had my trekking poles. I started out with Leckies that were the fiberglass, the carbon fiber. poles. These are aluminum poles. My other poles, they were a 3-piece instead of the telescoping, but they ended up just breaking. One broke kind of because I fell on it, but the other one just I was hiking with it and it just fell apart. I mean, no real reason. And I was gonna send it back, but it turned out they only had a year warranty on the fiberglass, the carbon fiber poles, but the aluminum poles have a lifetime warranty. And I can tell you they're a little heavier, but they're way sturdier. And when you fall on them, instead of them breaking, they bend, and you can bend them back. Now, I'm sure you could, if you bend them too far, that would be a big problem. But I have bent these, and I bent them back. They worked real well. I got the cork. I don't really think that the cork is necessary. I had the almost like a foam grips before, and they actually they lasted a little bit better than the cork. But I like these poles. They were working real well for me. I would extend them to the length that I would use with my tent. So my tent here, which is a triplex, and I'll get to that in a second, but I would extend, and that was the same length that I would hike with, so I didn't have to do any adjustment with them, which was really nice. Okay, so I got my shoes, I got the stuff that I would wear, and then let's see here. Okay, so let's go through the outside of the pack first. So I would carry my hat, which is a different hat than I started with. And I'll explain that when I get to that stuff. And then I have a little light. One thing I would change if I was going to do it again is I would probably go with a dual white light and have another light that hopefully I could find one that was exactly like this, but with a red light. So I could have a white light and a red light. But this light still is pretty, it's not that bright. It's just bright enough. But I would always wear this. I would always have it with me or wear it at night because it was just a real simple little thing. Cause you don't need a whole lot of light. And then I would always take it with me to the latrine because the latrine, even in the daylight, a lot of the latrines were just, the privies were just, really dark once you got inside and shut the door. So always had to remember to do that. Kept it on this clip here so I could stuff it in there and it wouldn't be swinging around, and I had easy access to it. Anyway, that was my hat. Then the other thing that I kept in here at the end were my camp shoes and my water bottles. So I kept a water bottle in each one of my camp shoes. The water bottle without the label was always my dirty water bottle. And then the one with my label, and I have two of them. I had one on a shoulder strap pouch, and then this one. So I carried three bottles. They're 20-ounce bottles, and that was enough. If I needed, I could carry two that were filtered, and if I really needed extra water, I could carry one dirty water bottle full that I just still have to filter. So that worked out real good for me. Then my camp shoes worked out great. They're light and they're super. They were great for crossing streams. I had this bungee that I have. I can take that off or not, but this I can use to put around my heel if I'm worried about losing it because the water's really stiff, swift going through streams. Now, if I was to cross a stream that was just crazy stiff, I would usually cross it with my shoes on, with my boots. Just because you've got a lot more stability and you don't have to worry about them falling off and, rocks banging up against your ankles and things like that. Usually, if it was over my knees, I would just leave my boots on. If it was less than my knees and it didn't look too bad, then I would use my Crocs because then I could keep everything dry. So that was it. Okay, so that was my big pouch. That's what I kept in there. On the side pouch, so here, the side pouch where I kept my dirty water bottle, the way I could remember that was on this side, which would be the right side. I would always keep my filter in the bottom pocket, okay, and this is the platypus filter, and then I would also keep my tent stakes. And then I can reach that. There's my tent stakes, so for my triplex tent. And I could reach this. So if I had other things that I could put in there, I would, like, for example, my sunglasses, which I don't have, but I wore sunglasses and I would put them in here. The only problem was I put them in here one time and the surface of them rubbed up against the filter and kind of rubbed a smudge spot on it that kind of ruined the glasses. So I would probably in the future, I would either get something that would allow them to hang around my neck, or I would have some kind of, sock or something in here that I could put them in, or some kind of pouch or something that would protect them. But that was that. And then in here is my cook system. So this is the upper pouch, and for my cook system, open it up. This was pretty easy. So I always would put my cook system in a grocery bag, plastic grocery bag. And that way, if anything got dirty, it kept everything together. And then if the pot ever got dirty, which it didn't really very much on this because I didn't cook over a fire with it very often. But if it ever did get dirty, then I could put it in there and it wouldn't get anything else dirty. But I took this, pot with me, and then inside it, I would have my fuel canister. I don't have it with me, but I have one of those mini fuel canisters that would be in the bottom, and this would be, I'd slide this in. I would always wrap my stove with my handkerchief, and then I would use this as a pot holder, if things were hot or to mop up some water or whatever. And then my stove, this is a MSR Pocket Rocket. I would do that, and I would always wrap it in this because then it wouldn't rattle. So between this cushioning my fuel canister and also wrapping that in there, I didn't have anything banging around. And then this would go in this, and that would go in there, and then I put the rubber band around it, and it was a done deal. So I'll set this over here, and we'll keep going. All right, that was everything in this pocket and this pocket. So those are my two pockets there. Then on the other side, on the left side, I remembered left is long, which that's my long pocket. And that I would keep a container for water. So this is for extra water. I think this holds 96 fluid ounces, something. It holds a lot of water. It's big. And I used that whenever I had to go down and get water and carry it back instead of trying to fill the little bottles. And that worked out super good. And that was one of the things I really didn't know I was gonna be that handy, and it turned out to be super handy. And then the other thing I keep in here, I guess I keep two other things in here. One is my rain jacket. So this is the rain jacket that I ended up with. And this wasn't, it's a Frog Tog kind of, special edition Frog Tog or whatever. And the only thing that I didn't really like about that, I like the pockets, but I wish they would have just made that a sealed up pocket instead of being this material, because everything else would kind of drip dry and run dry, but these pockets are cloth or fabric, and they would get wet and they would just stay wet, and then you'd roll the whole thing up and it would smell, and just not a good situation. So I'd do something else if I had to do over again. This is super light, so I like the lightness of it, but I would definitely go with something that didn't have this type of pocket. I like the pockets. I would want to keep the pockets, but I wouldn't want this type of pocket for the next time. And then I've got my pack cover. Now I started with a Cuban fiber pack cover from Z-Packs, and it just shredded. Matter of fact, if I could write them and get my money back, I would want to. It's very expensive for it to shred. But when I'd put it around my whole pack and then I'd set my pack on the ground, eventually it just wore a hole in the bottom of it. I mean, it's not there. It's a super tough material. This is the material that it's made out of, but it wasn't abrasion resistant at all, and so it just fell apart. But this is an Osprey pack, and it's like a silly nylon type material, maybe ripstop, something like that. And it worked great, and it did not shred, and it covered my pack. It was almost a perfect fit. It actually fit my pack better, and it definitely is not leaking. Now, these Cuban fiber packs, I'll talk about that a little bit. They are definitely good for being water resistant, and where the material is, they're very good at being waterproof. But all the bags that I have that are Cuban fiber, where the seams are, they all will leak. And so every single bag that I have I've had a problem with having water in it, because I would get in a situation where it would, it'd either be raining all day or it'd be a food bag that was Cuban fiber, and I hang it up, and then if the water sat on a seam, it would go into the bag. So that wasn't a very good situation. So I probably will do something else if I want to be waterproof in the future. But anyway, this is my pack cover. It's an Osprey pack cover, and it worked real good. Okay, that's it for that pocket. That's it for this pocket. The bottom. So on the bottom, I just used this bungee cord, and I just rigged this up myself. And I have this foam pad. This worked really good. Now at the end, this is a full foam pad because I actually sent this foam pad back and got another one because they kind of get torn up as you hike and use them. But at the end, what I did was I really just cut this almost like a third of it off and threw the rest of it away. And I just needed like 3 folds in order to protect the tent. The reason I use this a lot more to protect the tent when I would set the pack down or do that than I did as an actual pad. But I did use it as a sitting pad too, and a kneeling pad for climbing in and out of my tent. So it kind of had multi-purpose, but it was really, I'd say, instrumental in protecting my tent. I think if I hadn't had this, I think I would have shredded my tent and probably had to purchase a new tent. So that's that. So I can pull those out of here. And so that's the pad. You can see that's the pad, and then this is my tent, and it's triplex. I will say I love the triplex. It has one drawback, and that is it's got quite a bit significant larger footprint than the duplex. And sometimes you were looking for, you all you had was a smaller area to set a tent up in, and it was kind of problematic a little bit to set up the triplex. But if I was doing it again, I would still go with the triplex just because it was big enough room that I could pull everything into my tent and keep it away from bugs and slugs and and rain and all that. I could just have everything in my tent. I didn't have to worry about a spider crawling on my gear or any of that. I would pull everything. Every night when I was sleeping in a tent, I would pull everything in. And I thought that worked really good. And there was plenty of room to do that. So that was great. Okay, so now we'll go right zipper first. So I remember right zipper is protection equipment. That's how I remember that. So my bug spray protects me from bugs. My light is kind of emergency to protect me so I can see. I've got my lighter, which means I can, make a fire if I need. I've got my inReach also in there, and I've got a bug net. And the bug net, I brought it. It's pretty light. I never used it, but there were a couple times I thought I would. But this 100% DEET really it works. And I don't like putting bug spray on me, but this was the best option because it really kept the bugs away, and it was, it's fairly light to carry and all that. So that was it. That was everything that was on the right side of my pouch. Then on the left side of my pouch, I had entertainment stuff and just miscellaneous stuff. So there's my earbuds. I had a little marker, some sunscreen, and that's what I had in that. So at different times I would play around with different things, but this is just what I ended up with because other things I sent home or whatever. I started off with all these being, I would keep a Ziploc bag full of toilet paper in here also, which I don't don't have now, but I would do that. Okay, so that's my pouches. Now the only thing left now, okay, so I talked about my shoulder strap pouch, so I could reach this water conveniently all day. So this would always have water in it. Then my other bottles may or may not have water in, depending if I needed to carry a whole bunch of water. Okay, so on the top of my bag, the last thing I would put in is my food bag. Now this generally would be huge and full of food, but I don't have any food in it. Typically I would carry 3 to 4 days of food. I did put 6 days of food in there at one point for one of the treks we did, but typically it was 3 to 4. And 3 to 4 days, especially when I was trying to carry a lot of calories, it would be, 80, 90% full. So we were cold soaking our oatmeal, and these Talenti containers, they come with ice cream or gelato. They worked just fantastic. You could fill it up with oatmeal, and then before we go to bed, we'd put water in it, put it back in our thing. Then in the morning, we'd just eat cold oatmeal, and it was really good. Sometimes we would put cran raisins in there. Sometimes we would add extra protein powder to do that. And the cream and fruit, like peaches and cream or strawberries and cream, those are the ones that tasted, I felt like, the best out of what typically you could get. So I'd carry that in there, and I would typically have it would be full of stuff. Then I had spices, because some of the dried meals, they just didn't have a lot of kick to them. So I'd like to spice them up sometimes. So that's my own concoction of spices. And then all the rest of this would be food. And then I'd have this, what I call a bathroom bag or toiletries bag. But this was down inside there, and it was so I could pull it out without having to dig through the bottom to find, little miscellaneous things that I needed. And this is all stuff that smells, so it needs to be hung in your bear bag. And of course, my bear bag is my food bag. And so all this stuff needed to be in there. So let me just pull out what that would be. So I had my titanium extra long spoon, and you really needed an extra long because you're digging into food, those dehydrated food bags all the time. So extra long spoon was necessary. Then I've got my bear bag, and here's an example of see how it shreds? So that's orange cord in there, but that is just abuse from it landing on the ground. Like I said, you couldn't tear this yourself, but if you scrape it against something, it tears fairly easily. But anyway, this has slick line from Z-Pack, and it's the thinner. I had the thicker, and I'll go over that in a little bit, but I definitely would go with this size cord, the smaller size cord, rather than the bigger size cord, because you can get a lot more in it, and it's lighter, and you just don't need that big cord. But anyway, so this was my bear rock bag, so I could, and I'd use this to throw over limbs and pull up my line, and then I'd pull up my food bag from there. There's some Q-tips in a bag. And I would keep, Advil or, things like that. Then I had a butane lighter. This is a replacement one. The one I had on there worked about 3/4 of the way, and then it stopped working. I think it just got too humid. We just ran into a ton of rain, and it just didn't work anymore. But this is exactly the same one, but just a replacement. And then I had my toothbrush and my toothpaste. Now I started with a cut-off toothbrush. Like I just took my regular toothbrush that I use every day, and I just cut it in half, and did that. And I found that just wasn't sanitary, because when you're grabbing a toothbrush way up here, you have to get in order to brush the back of your teeth, you have to get your hands in your mouth. And your hands, when you're out camping, you can't keep them very clean. So you really don't want them back in. So with this, I can be way back here, and I can, brush my teeth, and that way I don't have to have my dirty hands anywhere close to my mouth, which I thought worked much better. This is really light, just a pretty simple toothbrush, worked great. And then just a regular old travel, toothpaste. I tried the toothpaste pills, and I thought those were great, but this is just so much more convenient as far as being able to find it anywhere. So I use that. So all that goes in the mesh bag because I can see any of the items in there. And like I said, I don't want it to be a Ziploc because I got my toothbrush in there and I want it to dry out. So, and then that goes in my food bag and all my food's in there. And then, you know, that's what I ended up using for my food bag that I would hang for my bear bag. Okay, then I've got a liner. This is a Cuban fiber liner. It's super tough, but like I said, you cannot count on it being waterproof. When the bottom of my bag down here would get really wet and it would stand in water, sometimes I would have my cover on it and the cover would fill up with water at the bottom. And so water would be sitting down here and then it would somehow soak through. Now, it never did it bad enough that it really caused me a problem, but I really never had the problem in winter either, which would have been way worse to have a little bit of a wet part of the sleeping bag being wet. But like I said, that didn't happen. So, okay, so inside there, I've just got three items now that I finished with. I've got my bedtime bag, I'll call that. I've got my electronics bag, and then I've got my sleeping system. And my sleeping system, okay, so that's everything. I have nothing else in my backpack. That completely cleans out my backpack. This is a quilt setup system, and the thing that I thought was really great was I can do this by having the quilt attached to my air mattress, my sleeping bag, and I can roll them all up together, and that way it's not a pain to have to put my quilt on my mat every day. I just keep it all together. This worked out really good. It works for hot and it works for cold. I'll tell you how I get away with this when it's really cold. I've got puffy pants and puffy jacket that I wear, that I sleep in, which takes this really down to probably around 10 degrees. The setup right now I think is 30 degrees, but with the puffy stuff it takes it down a lot lower. So that's that. I'll go over my electronics first, and then my bedtime bag. All right, so this is my battery bank. It's a 20,000 milliamp battery bank, and I started with a 10, and I just was always worried and sometimes would fall short of having battery the whole time. And so I switched to this one. I was much happier with that. And I wrapped it with Leukotape, so I would have Leukotape in my tent. I also have Leukotape, if you notice, on my trekking poles, but sometimes your tent's set up with your trekking pole and then you're in your tent, and it's just not easy to get the Leukotape off of it once you're using your trekking poles for your tent. So I put some here so I could use this in my tent. And this little bag, my electronics bag, is a waterproof bag. Then I had my air pump. Used this the whole time. Fantastic. It's got a light on it. So that's great. It blows up my air mattress in no time, and my pillow. My pillow also is rolled up inside there. So I use I think it's a Nemo pillow. So that's great. I definitely think that's a very valuable deal. And then I've got my charging equipment. So I wanted a system where I could, when I got to a place I could charge everything at once, so I wasn't charging things serially. I was charging them in parallel, so it would cut back on time. And a lot of times that really paid off. I probably could have got away with maybe a 3 charge outlet system instead of this one, which is actually a 6. There's one more right here. It's 6. But I don't know if I'd have really saved a lot of weight there, and this worked really good. I had stuff that can charge everything. This is for my earbuds, and then I could charge my InReach, and I could charge my headlamp, and I could charge my phone, and I could charge my battery bank all at the same time. And these are all really short cords, cables, in order to save weight. But I would recommend one long cable that reaches your phone, because this sometimes is really great if you want to actually use your phone while you're charging, and the place that you're charging is not, real convenient, like it's down on the floor or behind a table or something like that. And you can get this out so you can actually be charging and using your phone. And one of these things is really great because you never know what you're going to end up with. So this is a converter, so I can use regular USB or the USB-C, either way. And then the other end is just a USB-C that is what my phone works on, which charges other things too. But so anyway, so that's that. I would recommend that. And so that worked out good. I'd also would keep in here, I would keep toilet paper in here also. And I would also keep some medicine. So all my medicine, I don't have my medicine bag, but I had my first aid kit and medicine bag. That was all also kept in here. So it was just a Ziploc, small Ziploc with first aid stuff, Band-Aids, that sort of thing. And then another Ziploc with ibuprofen, Advil, Aleve, Benadryl, things like that. So anyway, that was what I had in there, and that was kept in my tent with me. Then I'll call my bedtime bag. I'm gonna set this down for a second. I use both hands to unzip. So my bathroom bag. So I had deodorant, and this was not something I started with because I read a lot of blogs that said, it's pointless to have deodorant. But I am definitely on the side of saying I don't think they're right about that. I think it definitely helps. It definitely, at least for the first, if you're out there for 4 days, if you can just get 1 or 2 days where you're, not stinky from sweat, it makes a big difference in how much stink you are at the end of 4 days. And it really doubles also as something that can help you with chafing. So you can put in areas where you're getting chafing, and this will make a big difference that way. So I'm a proponent of the antiperspirant. All right. And I typically don't use it as a deodorant, even though this one is, because it's a mini, and they don't make the Arm & Hammer No Scent, which isn't a deodorant. It's just an antiperspirant, which I think is really all you need. The deodorant kind of just adds a smell, fragrant smell that I don't think is that great. So anyway, this would be an example of my toilet paper bag. Of course, this is not near enough toilet paper. You'd want significantly more toilet paper when you're really going to go out for 3 or 4 days. But this is just an example of that. And then I've got my extra t-shirt, which is another wool t-shirt. This is, I think, a -33. But and if you notice, I'm kind of dark gray with the shirt that I have on. This is kind of a darker one. I had, in the middle of the trek, I had a merino shirt that was kind of light blue. And boy, everything, all the sweat marks and stains and just everything showed up on it. So I thought it was a lot better to go with a darker color, just so you don't gross people out when you go into town and they see you looking all gross. And then my shorts, which these are the shorts that I started with, and they were awesome. They work great. They're just super light. They're lined, so I can use these without, when I'm washing my underwear. I can wear these, but they work super good. And in the end, this was what I was sleeping in. So when I started, I was sleeping in, and I'll go over that in a minute, but I was sleeping in long underwear bottoms, thermal bottoms, and a long sleeve hoodie shirt. But in the end, this was all I was wearing because it was summer. And then I've got my pee bottle. All right. And then I've got my extra socks. Now, my extra socks, after I wear a pair of socks, they don't go back in here. They go here, and I put one on this side of my shoes and one on this side of my shoes, and I kind of stretch them out, and I kind of leave them out so they can dry. So that's the best I can do for hanging them, making sure I don't lose them. But they got some chance of drying out a little bit while I'm hiking. So once they're gross, that's where they go. I don't put them back in my bedtime bag. But these are clean, and when they're clean, I keep them. That's where I keep them. And then this is my pill bag. Like I said, I said my pill bag was in here, my medicine bag, but I think I switched it to here because sometimes I would take this with me other places, and I never took this. Always just went straight in. But if I was going to the bathroom, I would take this bag with me, and so maybe it was more convenient to have the pill bag in there. I forgot that I did that. But and then I've got just kind of a miscellaneous other stuff like a repair stuff, and I kept it in there. And I could keep that in my electronics bag too, and I actually did for a while, but it just seemed like this bag was a little more convenient to keep it in and keep that bag with a little bit more room in it. And that was it for that. So that's everything that I took with me, basically, for the Appalachian Trail through hike, and what I ended up with. Now, keep in mind that's, we ended at July 30th, so that's, summer equipment. But I'm going to stop this video. This will be part 1, and then I'll start part 2, which will be the things that I started with that I didn't either replaced or ended up not needing in the later miles of the hike. Okay, that's all for now. Hope you enjoyed that. I'll start the next video here in just a second.